Hello, and welcome to HeartSense's The Pulse, where we tackle pressing issues in healthcare with the HeartSense team. Today, we will be discussing the transformation of medical education amid the pandemic. And this is with our co-founder, Dr. Madison Keller, and our special guest, Madison Keller, MD candidate at Louisiana State University, New Orleans School of Medicine. Dr. Keller and Madison, welcome, and thank you so much for joining me today.
Thank you for having us, Sabrina.
Thanks. Yeah, I'm really interested to hear what's going on with medical education. I mean, before the pandemic, it seemed like you had your medical routine and there was so much going on for a medical student. But now at this point, you have on top of your workload and, stress load as a medical student, this whole pandemic concept and how that has kind of turned into a whole different experience for the medical student nowadays. So,
yes,
yeah,
it's very different.
Yes. So thank you so much for taking time today to chat with us.
Of course. Thank you.
So why don't we start out with you telling the community, who you are, how do you know about HeartSense, and where are you in your medical education at this point?
Yes, so thank you for the introduction. My name is Madison Keller again. I am a second year at LSU New Orleans School of Medicine. So we're about to start school again and get back into the swing of things. I've been doing research over the summer on gynecological oncology. So it's really been interesting, an interesting time. And I've been knowing HeartSense since the day was started. Been in the initiative for forever and excited to continue to be a part of the important work that HeartSense does. And yeah, so that's a little bit about me.
Great. Dr. Keller, do you want to add anything?
Yeah, Madison, you might have gathered by now that Madison is my daughter, and she has expressed a lot of interest in gynecology and obstetrics, and we have talked about having a project where we use some of the technology that we have in HeartSense in the assessment, evaluation, and diagnosis of ladies who have pregnancy or other kinds of abnormalities that might involve their heart and their intravascular volume. So it's going to be really interesting to see how we can use the technology to be able to take care of people across the spectrum of cardiovascular disease. And that's a really specific interest of hers. And I'm encouraging her to pursue that interest because I think it's really an important way that we can reach more people.
Yes. Wow. That's fantastic. Oh my goodness. I never, really thought how much heart valvular disease and heart healthcare can also, of course, tie into OBGYN. So, wow, really cool. I look forward to hearing more about that endeavor.
Yes.
Yeah, so let's get started with our questions for today. Okay. So, with the surge of the COVID-19 pandemic and these, new variants that we feel like just keep coming out, right, when we think we're getting a good handle on it,
yes.
How has your medical school experience differed from the students that, existed before March 2020?
Yes, so I began medical school in 2021. So like right in the middle, things were starting to slow down a little bit. So they were transitioning back to in-person classes with a Zoom option. So if you were ever exposed to COVID or anything, you could always be on Zoom. Or if you didn't feel comfortable being in the classroom, you could always join via Zoom as well, which is very different because most of the time it's either you go to class in person or it's recorded and you watch it after class. So they still have the recorded option available as well, which is beneficial too, because, we can go back to our lectures and like really understand the concepts sometimes that you might not get in live lecture. So that's a little different having the Zoom option and like.
Which did you prefer and why?
I liked in person. Obviously, I feel like in person or like even on Zoom live, you're able to ask questions and like really understand what the teacher's saying and like connect with them.
Sure.
Whereas in recording, I feel like, you know, that's for me to fill in the gaps. Like, okay, if I didn't get anything, but if I have a question, then I can't really ask it. You know, I would have to email. So I, of course, love the in-person option. So
That translates to actually being a doctor too, because when patients come to the doctor to see the doctor, one of the most important things doctors do is touch patients,
right,
and interact with patients in real time. And so it is interesting to me about how education in general, but medical education specifically, has had to accommodate this remote learning and remote interaction, and what feelings physicians and practitioners and students have about that. And have you talked to any of the patients or any people that you've come into contact with about telemedicine or about remote visits and so forth, and how they feel about it?
yes, there's like two sides. Of course, like it does allow us to have more access. If you have telemedicine, you know, patients are able to have like, don't have to travel for long distances and things like that. But, you know, you miss that in-person feeling of, okay, the doctor really understands what I'm saying. They can see me, you know, they're able to, you know, really look at me and like help me with my problem. So I think that like from what I've experienced and from what I've been hearing, it's like has both sides. Like it's really great, but it does have its drawback.
It's very convenient to have a televisit, so you don't have to pack up the family or pack up everything and go to the doctor's office. But by the same token, I think there's some nuances involved in-person, face-to-face interaction that really cannot be conveyed by a two-dimensional image on a screen, you know?
Yeah.
Sure. Yeah, I definitely agree. I mean, just from like seeing this perspective, yes, you can see my hands here when I'm talking, but of course you can't see any mannerisms that might be happening with the patient in those telehealth experiences. So has that at this point been your clinical experience with patients? Are you now able to see more patients in person?
So yes, we're able to see patients in person. It's more limited now because, you know, you can't have as many people in the room with the patient because of the exposed risk. But I am able to see patients in person. So that's been really good because, you know, it's even when I'm with HeartSense and doing heart screening, seeing them in person is like good to help me with my patient, doctor-patient, you know, interaction so that I'm able to make them feel comfortable because you can't really, you know, express like how you're feeling over Zoom. Even like when I was interviewing for medical school, like I was like trying to convey myself in a way that seemed like, you know, I was able to get my message across, and it's harder over a screen. So, but yes,
oh my gosh.
But I've had other things too, like in my education that have like been beneficial that they had some changes to the curriculum. So we're able to have more access to like online resources, like to help us study. So when we weren't able to go into anatomy lab, like to have the cadaver, or we call them donors. So we weren't able to do that for the first half of the semester. So they offered us this website that's called Complete Anatomy, which basically was like a three-dimensional skeleton, and it also had the muscles and all the nerves and the arteries and everything we needed to learn because that's what we learned first semester. And so you're able to isolate the specific nerves and specific arteries and veins. And it was really, really cool and very high tech, like technology. So it was great. But when we were able to be in person, like I said, over the donor and like have limited exposure to COVID risk, it was so much better because we were able to like feel it and see and like actually connect things instead of just looking at the screen. So it helped me a lot in my studies being in person.
Wow. Oh my goodness. That is really interesting. So what you were just talking about, did you also have any kind of simulation as well with that donor experience to try and get the touch concept?
Yeah, so in the beginning, like I said, we had that complete anatomy resource online, but they
Hmm.
also tried to do individual dissections. So the teachers would dissect like the arm when we were learning the arm, and they would let us like come into the lab in smaller groups and see it. But actively dissecting was better, obviously us finding and being like, oh, what does this look like, instead of having it already dissected and us coming in and like trying to see, okay, like how did this come about? So they did offer that, but we liked it in person because it's a COVID risk. Like over your donor, there's 4 students for 1 donor, and you're all helping each other. And that whole experience in itself is something that is like life-changing for us as doctors, because like it's our first patient. So we're able to really see how we can have an impact and appreciate the donors who donated their bodies for us to learn. And so it's really important part of our education.
Yeah, I think that's a really great point too, to emphasize the fact that it is a relationship between the donor and the student as much as it's a relationship between the student and their education. So.
Yes. So that kind of segues into the next question. So what were like other innovative methods that are being utilized in medical education at this point, I guess, from the transition of being in the heart of pandemic when you first started to now 2022, where you're going to start here?
Okay. Yeah, so like I said, we've had a few changes, but we've also had a few things that we're able to have again that we had before the pandemic. So now we're able to have like in-person activities again. And so the organizations before had to be on Zoom. So you had to meet all your friends like when you first start school on Zoom and try to have a connection, which is like, harder because you want to just like feel out, and see what they're about. So having that come back, be in person, is like something that'll be really important for the first years. And even us as second years, since we didn't get to like really meet everybody the first time. But, they tried to have Zoom. Zoom has its, benefits and learning curve on its own.
Yes.
Like games on Zoom, or like have study sessions. Like sometimes my friends would just like get on Zoom and we would all be studying. And if we had a question, we would just like unmute just for like accountability when studying. But the teachers did a really good job with trying to accommodate us. They were more attentive to their emails and sending out more resources, putting more resources on our online portals. So they really did try to make it as best as possible for us. And even they really like in person. They tell us all the time that they would rather see us, but this is the world we live in, it's changing.
So if you had a chance to be able to devise an ideal learning platform for first year medical students in this day and age, what would it be?
I think that it should still incorporate a lot of in-person. So I would say have in-person classes, continue to record the classes for review. I would also say, if we weren't able to be in large groups, have more small group activities spaced out, just to have some interaction with the students, even if it's, just for a little while. I like group projects or like group learning. I think that's really beneficial. So I would definitely incorporate that into it, and like have more case studies where we can like put our learning to use and like all talk about the best way to go about the case that we're looking at in relation to our studies. So I think all of those things would be beneficial, and LSU does do a lot of them. We have a big old like TBL room, which is a team-based learning room where we're able to collaborate, but we weren't able to use it as much because of COVID. So having more access to those things would be the best way.
Yeah. Wow. I really love how Dr. Keller, you asked Madison, what does she kind of envision for that first year experience, especially because hers was so different. And that kind of reminded me about a study that happened in 2021 with the Biomed Central Medical Education. and that they just really believed that medical students that are in it right now should be part of what the future of medical education should be. And yeah, so that's really interesting to hear your thoughts about, what a first year hopefully can experience now in this day and age.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I just feel like it's so important to have medical students have more of a voice, because the world is changing. Like every few months, the world is changing, and like having the same rules or the same way of doing things, just because it's the status quo is not gonna like cut it for long, because we're changing as people, as society. So we need to be changing how we're learning and how we're most effectively getting our patients the best care as possible. So
Yeah, and obviously the technology is changing too. So we have to be able to accommodate and take advantage of all of the changing technology in the way that we learn and the way that we teach people and the way that we interact with patients too. And so I think it's a really good point. And I think the most important prevailing theme, I would say, is that we have to be open to changing these things. And as you said, not be as regimented in the way that we do things, just because we have to work fast and be able to accommodate all of these things.
So in the last year and a half, it's probably been pretty challenging to have that clinical setting, like you said, the doctor to patient type of relationship that you're testing out while you're in med school. But what ways have you been able to contribute in a meaningful way to your community or even outside of your community with HeartSense?
yes, so with HeartSense, we still have our health screenings that happen every couple months. So that's a great way to just have a call for people in minority communities who could benefit from our health fairs and from our technology that we have. So being involved with that has been really, really helpful, and a way that I can reach out to the community. Also to Turks and Caicos, and we were able to help that community too, which is great, because it makes us realize that just because we're an organization from Louisiana doesn't mean we can't bring this very important access around the world to communities in need. So it was really, really great. The people from Turks and Caicos were really thankful. We helped a lot of people. We saw a lot of people from the different parts of the islands. And we educated them on things that they might not have been aware of. And they were really into it. They were like asking questions and like wanting to be involved. So that just shows you that communities really want to know more about their health, and they just need like to have the avenue to ask questions and learn about it. And LSU is really big on community service. So I've actually been able to be in the community a lot. I'm in the student-run community clinic, where we help the homeless community and people who can't afford healthcare. We provide healthcare to them, and we're all under a physician's watch. So it's really beneficial for those patients. And then just having drives for people affected by hurricanes who might need some help, or health screenings. I'm in this other organization that does research and education and community outreach, and we are having a health screening this month to do, blood pressure and blood sugar and temperature and all the basic things in the health screening. So it'd be really great if we could have like HeartSense's technology there too, to just add that on top of the regular everyday type of screenings that we usually have.
Yeah, I think that's a great idea, because we really want to bring valvular heart disease into the realm of being a wellness issue, just like taking care of hypertension and dyslipidemia and arrhythmia. We want to make heart valve disease evaluation a wellness metric as well. So it would be the perfect place to be able to devise a plan for that.
Yes, and when is this health screening happening?
It's July 30th. It's for one of our professors. Her son passed away, and she's having a blood drive and health screening in the community. So LSU's spearheading it. We're having different people come and donate and participate in this health fair So yeah, it should be a great opportunity.
Yeah, maybe that's an opportunity for HeartSense to also get involved. We'll have to stay tuned
Yes.
for that information.
Yes.
So that since we're on the topic of screenings, there's a lot of advanced technology that's going into HeartSense screenings. Donated technology and digital stethoscopes from Echo. They have ultrasound devices with Butterfly that are being used on community members. So how does that advanced capability impact your assessment with a patient versus using a conventional stethoscope?
I think that it's really, really beneficial because they're able to see on, like, you connect it to your phone and they're able to see their heartbeat and see all of the things that it's like monitoring. And it's within 30 seconds, it can detect a heart murmur and it can provide EKG and an ultrasound, all that they can watch. And so I feel like it's like groundbreaking, like that we're able to bring this, and it's something so simple. It's literally a stethoscope and you put it on the chest for like 30 seconds max, and it's able to detect all these things like really easily. So I feel like it's something that we're so grateful that they were able to donate to us to give to these communities, because, you know, like I said, regular blood pressure and blood sugar is great, but we would love to also like have an EKG, like without having to have the whole, you know, EKG machine and like in a hospital, like just have access and have it be so portable to these health screenings is like really amazing.
Yeah, it's incredible to see someone's face light up when they see their EKG or they hear their heart murmur. It really does a lot to engage the patients and to make them active participants in their health as opposed to just getting your report from a doctor.
Yeah.
Yeah, that is really incredible. I mean, you're right. Like that whole interaction of seeing it in real time is, you know, life-changing for those patients that are being screened and realizing, wow, I really need to get myself in gear if something is caught on the technology, or they're like, oh, hey, okay, what I'm doing is on a good track for my heart health and also just keeping a healthy lifestyle.
Yeah,
So
and
that's
also like it makes the patients feel more comfortable because they're able to see what you're doing instead of just, oh yeah, I'm listening on my stethoscope and I'm like diagnosing you with this. No, you're able to see, you're able to look and like see what we're doing, and that like is really beneficial for making them more comfortable.
Yes. So was that kind of the same reactions you were getting when you were in Turks and Caicos with those
Yes.
patients?
Yes, they were looking at it. They're like, oh, I see it. This is great. Oh, it's telling me this. They were able to just be like more like accepting of what we were telling them because they were able to see it themselves.
Okay, so final question for today's chat is more geared towards Dr. Keller. How can HeartSense assist medical students and maybe residents in the area with their own education and patient experience?
Yeah, it's a very interesting question. And, you know, we have a number of different issues in the diagnosis and management of patients with valvular heart disease. We have an undertreatment issue, which means people who have known valvular heart disease either get treated with conventional techniques, which include transcatheter techniques and surgical techniques, or they have medical management. And we have a significant problem with undertreatment in this day and age, most specifically related to access to care. And this is very evident in transcatheter aortic valve replacement for aortic stenosis, because there are places in America that are rural or that don't have access to institutions that have transcatheter techniques or technology available, and they don't have treatment at all as a consequence, or they have surgical treatment, which is attended by a mortality risk that is significantly higher. So access is a problem to technology and advanced techniques, and we have an undertreatment problem for aortic stenosis specifically. But we also have an underdiagnosis problem, because the number of people that have aortic stenosis that never make it to the cardiologist is much more vast than the number of people that actually do. And so part of that is not because these people are going to bad doctors, but they are going to doctors that may not have a level of understanding as a specialist does. And that's to be expected. The primary care doctors specifically are forced to see large volumes of patients in environments that aren't conducive to the subtleties of cardiovascular bedside diagnosis. So there are a lot of murmurs that go untreated or undiagnosed or underdiagnosed for a longer period of time. And so one of the things that we have tried to do to take care of the underdiagnosis problem is give this technology to more primary care doctors, which is most likely the first point of contact for someone with a heart murmur to the cardiovascular disease realm. So we have, of course, cardiologists and surgeons that are very well versed in diagnosis and management of heart murmurs, but the primary care doctors may have so many other things that they're focused on, or may have so many other people to take care of that they don't appreciate the nuances of very specific cardiovascular diagnosis. With this realization in mind, one of the things that we are doing is we've partnered with the LSU School of Medicine Family Practice residency program in Lafayette. And what we are going to do is have a murmur clinic or a point of care ultrasound clinic where we see patients who have been found to potentially have a murmur or some cerebrovascular disease or peripheral arterial disease, and we're going to see them in the clinic and give the primary care residents a working familiarity with point of care ultrasound and digital diagnostics with the echo stethoscope. It's going to be a very new program that really focuses on having a wider net to cast for patients with valvular heart disease and cerebrovascular disease. And hopefully we can take care of the undertreatment problem in that way by educating people and giving them the wherewithal with the technology to be able to go out into practice eventually and use this in their primary care practice. And it is going to hopefully change the paradigm for diagnosis and management of cardiovascular structural heart disease so that we can get more people to cardiologists and cardiac surgeons to be treated.
Wow, that is incredible. Yeah, oh my goodness. So is there any kind of date or timeline going on for when that might start?
Yeah, it's going to start this quarter.
Oh, yay.
So we have recently received word that it will be something that is going to be part of the curriculum for first and second year family practice residents.
Awesome.
As well as anybody else who wants to come and join in too.
Yeah, and so you said these were more so for the patients or community members that there's been some kind of identification of a heart valve disease issue, or could any other community member possibly go into this clinic?
Yeah, the way that this particular clinic is going to work is that these are patients that have been suspected of having a problem, either of a structural heart problem or a cerebrovascular disease problem, and they will be referred to this particular clinic from the other primary care clinics that are ongoing. So we're really excited about the potential to be able to share this technology on a scale that's going to be able to allow us to be in front of as many people as we think deserve to have this particular diagnosis attended to.
Yes. Wow. Wow, that's really such a great way to kind of end this chat, to hear, about even more hope for medical education and happening this quarter with LSU. So very exciting.
Yeah, I hope to be able to come back and tell you how it's going in a few months.
Yes, we would love that. And Madison, thank you so much for your time and for your guidance, even for those first years. Hopefully some of them are going to be watching this episode, and it'll be geared towards them and they'll feel inspired. Thank you so much, Dr. Keller and Madison. This has been The Pulse, and we hope that you continue to watch our videos.